The Elder Scrolls Online has a recent update that made Oakensoul builds, specifically heavy attack builds, the strongest they have ever been. I'm here to answer the important question. What's changed? And what's the best class for a 1-bar build, and why? I'm glad you asked. Welcome back, gang. It's Deltia from Deltiasgaming.com. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the best and the worst 1-bar builds with pros and cons on each class so you can make an educated decision on what you want to play going forward into 2023. Before we begin, if you find this video helpful, do me a big favor and hit that thumbs up and subscribe for more content. And if you're looking for the builds I use on each of these classes, check the link in the description below. We have group and solo player loadouts, something that will fit every player's need. Let's get started. Let's answer a really important question, which is what has changed and how do these 1-bar heavy attack builds work? Number one, it's the Empower buff. The Empower buff was changed in Update 35 to now increase your damage against monsters with heavy attacks by 80%, rather than your damage done with light and heavy attacks by 40%. During the same update, the popular Oakensoul Mythic was given the Empower buff permanently. This Oakensoul Mythic came with the benefit of having a myriad of buffs, but only allowing you to use 1 bar. Most of the big, massive buffs were reduced to minor rather than major. But the permanent Empower meant that every class, any role, any playstyle could take advantage of massive heavy attack damage, keeping their build simple and effective. Okay, so what is the Oakensoul heavy attack build? How does it work and what are the mechanics? This is going to seem very, very weird. We're going to stack max magic and we're going to use medium armor. The reason why is the hybrid changes that happened in 2022. With medium armor, you're going to get high crit damage, and with max magic, you're going to have enough magic in your tank to be able to cast spells constantly. Plus, you're able to get back magic very easily doing fully charged heavy attacks, giving you the best of both worlds and kind of blending the mix of magic and stamina. And you can decide if this is good or bad for the game, but you're seeing this permeate the Elder Scrolls Online. It's a blend. It's no longer purely stamina. It's no longer purely magic. It works on every single class, and that's why I'm not going to break them out to just purely magic or stamina. Just classes uses the exact same thing. Let me explain the rest. In this build, we're going to be using Lightning Staff on the front bar, because when wielding the Lightning Staff, the Tri-Focus Destruction Staff passive allows heavy attacks to deal damage to nearby enemies for 100% of the damage done. And the Ancient Knowledge passive increases your damage done with area of effect abilities by 10%. The Lightning Staff with Unstable Blockade morph sets enemies off balance. Off balance symbol is a little circle above the enemy's head. For 7 seconds, it's going to be active with roughly a 15-second cooldown. Combine off balance with a Warfare Blue champion point slottable called Exploiter, and you'll be doing 10% more damage during that off balance phase. Since we're talking about champion points anyways, an additional one is Weapons Expert from the Blue Warfare tree. This will increase your damage with light and heavy attacks by another 20%. Now you combine these variables with 2 base game 5-piece dungeon sets. The first being Storm Master, obtained in Tempest Island dungeon. When you deal critical damage with a fully charged heavy attack, your light and heavy attacks deal additional damage for 20 seconds. You combine this 5-piece with another one that's Sergeant's Mail, obtained in Wayrest Sewer dungeon. When you deal damage with a heavy attack, you gain a stack of Sergeant's Focus for 5 seconds, increasing the damage of your heavy attack per stack. This effect can occur every 1 second and stacks up to 4 times. At 4 stacks, you're going to be doing insane heavy attack damage. If everything aligns, all your procs, all your buffs are up, I got 93,000 critical hit on my Dragonknight solo, self-buffed. On a parse dummy, 21 million, all gassed up, ready to go, I got over 120,000 heavy attack damage. Some players can almost peak at 130,000. And to do this, all you're simply doing is holding down your trigger or your left mouse button. And so how this build works is essentially you put down your ground-based AoE primary dot, typically unstable wall of elements, because it procs off balance. Maybe 1 or more damage over time effects, and then just rip off heavy attacks. Ideally 4 consecutive heavy attacks to max out that Sergeant's Maul gear set, and then maintain your stacks while weaving in heavy attacks here and there, and if you have nothing else better to do, just do some heavy attacks. Applying damage over time effects like Unstable Wall when it expires, and you guessed it, 4 heavy attacks. The 2 5-pieces, Oakensoul Mythic, and a Slime Crawl 1-piece to give an extra critical chance, and you have a 5 medium, 1 light, 1 heavy setup that absolutely shreds. Here's a quick chart. If you want the exact details, head over to my site or pause the video. The best part about this build is it's not magic, it's not stamina. It can be used on literally every class, literally every playstyle, but just some are better or worse than others. And who's the worst? Well, before I answer that question, the footage you're seeing here is solo Tempest Island Veteran mode. I ran this here to simulate what an average player would experience in Overland or a dungeon. Independent for damage, healing, and survivability, mainly solo gameplay. My team has also tested these extensively on parse dummies, veteran hard mode dungeons, and even veteran trials, and believe me, they work. Last and certainly least, we have the Nightblade coming in C- tier. The Nightblade excels at range, mobility, and resource sustain. The downside is, every other class can do this as well, and the Nightblade really doesn't offer anything with the Oakensoul build that you really want to take advantage of. Let me explain why. What sets a Nightblade apart typically is mind-numbing damage. However, to get that level of damage, you need a lot of skills, constant light attack weaving, not heavies, and great cooldown management. The Nightblade suffers from having to maintain dots too frequently, which isn't a part of the current 1-bar build meta. The meta is this: lay down a couple of damage over times and rip off heavy attacks. The best classes passively heal themselves while doing damage, and while the Nightblade has incredible healing, a lot of it is tied to heals over time or burst healing, but requires much more global cooldowns and actions versus passively doing it for you. I'll be honest here, most of these 1-bar builds were relatively close in performance, besides the number 1 class and the last one. If you want to play a 1-bar build, I wouldn't pick up a Nightblade. It's too complex, requires too many actions, which is counter to the 1-bar build meta. Moving along to my favorite current 1-bar build, but definitely not the strongest, that's the Dragonknight. I rank the Dragonknight as B tier, and actually I've switched from a Templar to a Dragonknight as my main because I do not like the changes to the Templar. Where the Templar funeral at? And I'll try to be as objective as possible as I rank the Dragonknight number 5th on the list. It is a lot of fun, but it's not as effective as other classes, and let me explain the pros and the cons of this build. What the Dragonknight does well in the 1-bar territory is healing while doing damage. My 1-bar loadout had Burning Embers, which is a somewhat weak damage over time ability, but it heals you for anywhere to 2,000 to 5,000 heals per second, only requiring you to cast it once every 24 seconds. Another one of my all-time favorite abilities in the game is Draw Essence. Sucks in fire and heals you based off the damage done, then breathes out fire 2.5 seconds later, refunding magic per enemy hit. While playing this build, you'll feel like a walking, fire-breathing god, and it's so much fun, both visually and mechanically. It does the opposite of what the Nightblade does. It heals while doing damage, which allows you to throttle down on the actions. Well, what's the downside? The Dragonknight used to have a unique buff bolt and armaments that did extra heavy attack damage. PvPers unfortunately abused this in Update 34. You know who you are, causing the developers, well, to kind of homogenize this buff along with Solar Barrage, one of my other favorite Templar skills, RIP, and now you have an homogenized Empower buff and removal of the Dragonknight heavy attack identity that some players knew and loved. Moreover, the Dragonknight doesn't have a powerful execute like the Templar, very little group healing, and it's a bit more complex than the other 1-bar builds. My playstyle is melee heavy, with high actions per minute. That's literally the exact opposite meta playstyle to fully optimize the 1-bar builds in their current state. Too long didn't read here, the Dragonknight is fun, it's pretty good, but it's just not as effective as other classes. And let's get to the next one. That's my former main, the Templar. The Templar I ranked as B+ tier. Remember how I said I stopped playing the Templar and switched to the Dragonknight as my main? While that may be true, the Templar is still better pure 1-bar build, and let me explain why. The first reason is this: Blazing Spear now outperforms jabs or sweeps as your main spamble in damage. Meaning if you sit there and spam over and over casting Blazing Spear, it will do more damage than jabs or sweeps. Yes, a damage over time skill. Thus, the issue with the Templar is it's goofy. They completely gutted the one ability that I loved in the game in Update 35. Zoss, I love you, boo. While this seems weird, the ability has everything you want. It has high single target damage as a spammable, buffs our damage for slotting it via Piercing Spear passive, procs Burning Light passive with high damage over time, dot. Acts as a great synergy while playing the group. Combine that skill with the base morph of Cleansing Ritual, which has 2 really strong morphs. One super high damage Ritual of Retribution, and another high utility and healing Extended Ritual, and you're already providing much more utility to your group than the Dragonknight. Not to mention you have 1 heal on your bar, Breath of Life, that can carry any team's survivability, and now you have a pretty powerful 1-bar build with great group utility. Well, so what's the downside then? The Templar just didn't feel as strong as the other classes. The Templar has been nerfed into the ground except for one boring and obnoxious skill, and that's Beam, or Radiant Oppression. Radiant Oppression is the range execute, one of, if not the most effective executes in the game. On most builds, this damage starts outperforming your main spammable at or around 35% health. It becomes stronger the lower the health the enemy gets. In fact, it starts becoming more advantageous for you just to cast one ability and let all of your damage over time effects simply fall off and not recast them, because the damage is so strong it'll outperform beam. My parse bar can get over 100k beams, literally just sitting there pressing one button. It is very, very strong. But what's the downside then? Well, you guessed it, the heavy attack builds can get almost 130,000, and that's just holding your mouse button down. And that's the problem. You have an ultra powerful ability that won't really outperform your heavy attacks until right around 15 to 16% health. Thus, you're not taking advantage of the one remaining strength, if there is any. Not like I'm salty or anything. I personally don't enjoy the Templar gameplay anymore, like, at all. This one bar build for the Templar is actually really good. Has great AoE damage, good group utility, and great survivability. But let me show you another build with even more AoE damage that's 10 times more fun than the Templar. That's the Necro. Coming up in A tier is the Necromancer. The Necro has a lot to love in a one-bar build beyond looking amazing and feeling super tanky. The main pro of the Necro is on-demand hemorrhage status effect, healing, AoE damage, and off-balance on-demand. Ruin a Scythe, your main spammable. It does so much for you in one ability, it's hard to wrap your brain around it unless you play around with it. You can time your burst a lot better than using random unstable wall of elements, and swipe Scythe, rip off consecutive heavy attacks during that off-balance phase, and really time your burst damage on bosses or mobs. You have Major Breach built into your class. This debuff reduces armor and usually ramps up DPS a dramatic amount. This is more relevant in solo play, as mostly your tank will provide this debuff in group play. You also have Blast Bones, which might not fit into low action per minute heavy attack builds, but it's a blast, no pun intended, to use on trash packs and bosses, feeding your survivability and your resource sustain with corpses. This class looks and feels like a Necromancer, and I absolutely love playing it. So what's the downside? Well, its single target suffers a bit, primarily because, like the Nightblade, the Necro needs a lot of skill slots. Most Necros at high-end 2-bar builds don't even have a heal slotted or a main spammable, and just run mainly damage over time effects as much as possible. This isn't possible nor successful as a 1-bar build. Another disadvantage the Necro has is to playing in melee range with Scythe, which you don't have to use, but I enjoy and find it very effective. And what you end up having is an ultra powerful AoE monster that is super survivable, but lacks the single target damage the other classes have. It also feels a bit more complex even in a 1-bar build, and may turn people off looking for the most simplistic build out there. Well, with only 2 builds left, let me talk to you about my second favorite 1-bar build, and that's Lord Warden, coming in our number 2 position at A+ tier, and that's the Warden. Oh my god, this build is a blast to play. It gets the sweet spot of what I love: high survivability, big AoE nukes, amazing passives built in, and it looks cool, which, let's be honest, matters. The way I play the Warden is centered around Arctic Blast, which does many things for you. 1, it acts as an on-demand AoE stun, crowd control massive amount of mobs and trash enemies. 2, it does good damage, and it's over time with 20-second duration. 3rd, it does crazy burst healing, chucking 19,000 crit heals solo, which is a lot. And 4, it has higher chance to proc status effects like Chill. Thus, you have what I love, similar to Dragonknight, but better. An all-around hard carry skill that does 4 really important things for you. The next thing I love about the Warden is all the built-in ultra-powerful passives. Merely slotting animal companion skill lines boost your critical damage. With the Advanced Species passive, we get a small bit of healing every time we cast an ability from the skill line, and a massive recovery via Flourish just for slotting one skill. The Pet Feral Guardian, which I'm not a fan of, either morph though, does do crazy high DPS. Also, this pet acts as a distraction and stuns mobs for you, giving you great crowd control passively. The downside of the Warden is you aren't fully committed to playing at max range due to Deep Fissure. Moreover, it's a bit more complex in our number 1 position and doesn't have the same mind-numbing single target boss burning damage. And if you're watching this footage, you're probably wondering why I'm not using a Frost Staff, as now it bumps up your damage by 12%. We've tested each staff, and Lightning Staff is still overall king because of the ease, damage, AoE, and passives. Feel free to swap to an Ice Staff if you wish, but Lightning is my favorite. The Warden is the number 1 bar build for me if you're wanting a more in-your-face aggressive playstyle with a little bit more high action per minute. Has great survivability, It feels impactful when you use it, and it feels like you're doing enough stuff to be engaged. And it absolutely destroys in content, whether you're solo in a group. Shocker, the Sorc is #1 S+ tier. Look, I'm gonna be honest with you. I do not like playing the Sorcerer, and I really do not like playing this 1-bar build Sorc. But I think you who are watching this video will really like this build. It requires the least action per minute. It is the simplest, and yet it's the hardest hitting, highest parsing build out there for Oakensoul. This thing can get you into veteran trials with very little effort, with very little practice, and let me explain why. The combination of the pets with the Daedric Prey playstyle is absolutely obscenely strong. Not only do your pets do great damage, literally passively, but if you constantly main prey on your primary target, your pets deal an additional 45% damage to the target. That's 4-5! Both the pets, Twilight and the Familiar, require you to cast an ability once every 20 seconds, Blockade once every 10 seconds, giving you much more time to rip off those huge heavy attacks, meanwhile completely at range. The Sorcerer also has the Energize passive, increasing your physical and shock damage by 5%, which is a huge advantage in a lightning-dominant staff playstyle. With the Sorcerer, you can basically order food online, take a nap, read a book, call your mom and listen to her talk, meanwhile parse 90,000. As long as you hold that finger down on the heavy attack, you're good to go. Total snooze fest for someone like me, but absolutely shocking and objectively ultra powerful. Now for survivability, you have Critical Surge, which heals you for crits done every 1 second. With around 60% critical chance, high critical healing, you're going to get mind-numbing healing while doing damage. Combine this with Oakensoul's defensive buff, and you can literally face tank nearly all the content in the game. Moreover, the Sorcerer is one of the most hard carry classes in the game. Change your Twilight morph from Tormentor, the damage morph, to Matriarch, the healing one, and you can spam heals on anyone in your group. You're talking 24 to 25k heals on demand all the time. You can heal, do incredible damage, have insane survivability with almost no effort. The Sorc is literally effortless, requiring the least actions per minute and the highest single target damage out there. I've never really cared for this playstyle, if I'm being completely honest, and never enjoyed the pets, but I gotta keep it 1000 with my audience. It's not about me, it's about you. And I think if you're looking for the most simplistic, biggest damage, and really the most accessible, easy thing to get into endgame PvE, this is objectively the best build for you. Pick it up, honestly. Check the website, I got it on there. The only downside I see is the morph choices. I feel like when I play the Sorcerer with 1 bar, I'm limited to either single target heavy morphs and skills or needing to remorph or change a bunch of skills up for AoE. It's the same with the 2-bar builds, but I think the high single target damage morph and skills are the way to go, considering heavy attacks do so much AoE damage as well. You're also forced to using pets to play at the optimal level, even though non-pet loadouts can do still just fine. Look, pick this build up if you want the #1 hard carry class build in the game currently. 1-bar Oakensoul Sorc, begrudgingly, you're the champion. Well, until Zoss watches this video and nerfs it, they're coming for your fun. Well, gang, that's the video. Appreciate you watching. If you got anything out of this video, make sure to smash that thumbs up. Again, check out my website, link in the description below for all of these builds, giving you a template you can play around with, solo player, group, it doesn't matter. Also, make sure to head over to twitch.tv/Deltiasgaming, where I stream ESO and other games live, and my mom claims I'm the best streamer on planet Earth. Thanks for watching.